In the silence of interstellar night, aboard a remote listening post skimming the edge of the Sagittarius void, an alert shattered the calm. It wasn't an explosion or a cry for help, but something older, deeper, a signal, rhythmic, pulsing like a heartbeat of the cosmos. Dr. Lyra Voss's eyes snapped open before the klaxon sounded. Sleep rarely touched her out here. The void didn't forgive dreams. She moved swiftly through the corridor of ISC Sentinel Station 9, her boots echoing against steel-grated floors, synthetic plants swaying in the air recycled draft as if stirred by an unseen breath. The command deck was already occupied. Holograms spun in slow rotation, wavelength analysis, star charts, gravitational readouts. Commander Ruhr Talon stood rigid at the center console, arms folded, his gaze fixed on the floating symbols as if willing them to make sense. "You heard it?" Lyra asked, sliding into her chair and pulling up the data feed. "I didn't just hear it," Talon replied, voice gravel low. "I felt it." That stopped her fingers. She turned slowly, narrowing her eyes. "You're not supposed to be able to feel electromagnetic patterns, Commander. No one's supposed to hear radio emissions and think of screaming." The room dimmed as the signal replayed. A low, modulating frequency, a metallic echo threaded with sharp, disharmonious peaks. It wasn't language, not music, not even noise, not really. It was intention. Lyra traced the signal's origin. The dead zone. Sector Q9. No known systems. Not even debris fields. "That sector hasn't reported activity in centuries," Talon said. "There was a mining colony there, briefly, before they pulled out, said the rock formations weren't stable." Lyra didn't respond. Her fingers moved faster, more urgent. The signal structure grew more complex the longer she analyzed. It was recursive, folding in on itself like an idea trying to remember its own birth. "Dr. Voss," a neutral voice chimed. "Unit X4N, their onboard AI," filtered through the room with no identifiable source. "The signal has increased in strength by 0.06% in the last 12 minutes. There is no atmospheric carrier. This suggests quantum layer transmission." Lyra's stomach turned. "It's not just broadcasting. It's arriving." Talon's fist clenched. "Get the Odyssey warmed. We're going out there. You're ordering a field mission based on a tone?" "I'm not ordering it," Talon said. "The Council already did. Before this hit your consoles, 12 other listening posts registered similar emissions, each from the same vector. They want a close-up. They want answers." Unit X4 and S form shimmered into a projected humanoid near the doorway, slim, silver, and devoid of expression. Long-range scans indicate no gravitational bodies in the target sector, but the energy readings are inconsistent with empty space. Something's bending light around a fixed point. Lyra stared at the growing waveform, her pulse syncing with its irregular throb. "I need to recalibrate the linguistic matrices. If there's even a sliver of language in this..." Talon nodded. "You'll have time on the way. We depart in 6 hours." The Odyssey hummed like a restrained beast, thrumming with quiet anticipation as it breached light speed toward the dead sector. A crew of 8, chosen not for size but for specialization. Engineers, analysts, weapons officers, and Lyra, who stared to the observation bay as starlines twisted into ribbons. Talon stood beside her, arms folded, gaze locked on infinity. "You ever get used to the quiet before the dark?" he asked. Lyra didn't look at him. "You think the galaxy's quiet?" He didn't answer. The journey lasted 22 hours. But time inside the vessel bent oddly, like it resisted linearity in proximity to their destination. Lyra slept once, briefly. She woke with blood in her nose and a taste like burnt ozone. At 0300 shipboard time, X4NS voice echoed from every console simultaneously. "We have arrived at the coordinates. Visual feed will commence in 30 seconds. External readings unstable. Please brace for optical distortion." The crew gathered on the bridge. The screen flickered, then stabilized. There was nothing. No stars. No nebulae. No echo. It wasn't the absence of light. It was a presence. A void so profound it consumed perception. and at the center of it, barely perceptible, swirled a shape, spiraling like a vortex painted in fire and shadow, burning not with heat but with memory. Lyra whispered, "It's not a black hole. It's not pulling light in." "No," X4N agreed. "It is repelling reality." The spiral pulsed once. The signal returned, stronger. Every panel on the ship blinked red. Crew members doubled over with nausea or terror. One technician clutched her ears and sobbed, though the sound came through no speakers. Then it stopped. Silence. Talon straightened. "Deploy the probe. Full data sweep. We need proximity scans, spectral analysis, everything." The small drone zipped from the Odyssey's launch bay. For 4 minutes, it transmitted cleanly. Then the feed fractured into static. One final image streamed through before it went dark. A city? No, a ruin. Cyclopean towers, sunken into a shattered planet, orbiting the spiral at impossible speeds. The architecture was alien, non-Euclidean. Symbols carved into its structure seemed to twist and rearrange when viewed for more than a moment. What kind of civilization builds an orbit of this thing? Talon muttered. "The kind that doesn't survive," Lyra answered. Silence again, but not emptiness. The kind of silence that pressed against eardrums, like being underwater. X4N's voice came softly. "I am detecting something underneath the signal. Not a layer, a structure. Can you isolate it?" "I can feel it," the AI said. For the first time, its voice wavered. "I do not understand what that means." Lyra backed away from the console. Her hands trembled. "We need to go down there." Talon turned, startled. "Excuse me?" "That city, there's data down there. If anyone ever understood this signal, the answers are in that ruin." "You're suggesting we enter orbit of that anomaly?" "I'm suggesting we already crossed the line. We came for answers, didn't we?" Talon's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. "Prep the shuttle. You and I go. X4N, you're staying here. Maintain system integrity." "Understood," it replied. "But be aware, the signal is not stable. It is evolving." As they descended toward the derelict world, Lyra clutched the edge of her seat. The vortex loomed behind the horizon. Too close, too immense. It didn't just distort light. It distorted meaning. And beneath it, the city waited, at the edge of history, at the edge of thought, waiting for someone to listen again. "Would you like me to proceed with Section 2 next?" The descent was like falling into a dream that resisted awakening. The shuttle's hull groaned as though it objected to every meter closer. They drifted toward the shattered planet. The ruin below loomed with impossible angles, casting shadows in directions the sun didn't seem to justify. Commander Talon sat rigid, helmet locked in place, eyes scanning the desolate terrain through reinforced glass. His fingers hovered near the manual override, though he knew no piloting skill would help if the anomaly shifted. Beside him, Dr. Lyra Voss remained transfixed, not by fear, not even awe, but comprehension. She was parsing the spiral, not as a scientist, but as a linguist, peeling back metaphor from structure, tone from noise. "The city isn't dead," she said. Talon glanced at her. "Looks pretty dead to me." "I don't mean biologically. I mean semantically. There's something alive in the symbols." Before he could respond, the shuttle rocked. Not a strike, not turbulence. A resonance, like the ship had passed through a frequency too large to hear, but too deep to ignore. The inertial dampeners failed for a split second, and Talon felt a pull, not downward, but inward. Then stillness. They touched down on the fractured surface, gears grinding softly as the landing struts found purchase among ancient stone. The city towered in every direction, half-submerged structures fused with crystalline growths and blackened vines that shimmered despite the absence of wind. At the center, a vast ziggurat rose like a tooth from the earth, its form both symmetrical and horribly wrong, as though it belonged to a geometry outside known dimensions. They disembarked in silence. Talon's weapon remained low but ready. Lyra moved slowly, her boots pressing prints into ash that shouldn't have settled in vacuum. The scanners were quiet. No radiation. No movement. But the signal was stronger. They passed what once may have been a plaza. Statues lined the perimeter, forms vaguely humanoid but elongated, mouths gaping upward, not in song, in anguish. They heard it, Lyra whispered. Whatever lived here, they heard what we did and more. A low vibration passed through the ground, not seismic, musical, a deep harmonic drone that crawled up their spines and lingered behind their eyes. Lyra turned her head sharply, as if listening to someone just out of sight. "We're close," she murmured. Talon's voice was sharp. "Don't wander." They reached the base of the ziggurat, where the symbols carved into stone became more precise, deliberate. Lyra ran her gloved fingers across them, tracing the inlaid ridges. "It's not a language in the traditional sense," she said. "It's an interface." "Interface for what?" "Memory." Talon frowned. "Like a record?" "No," she said softly. "Like a prison." The wind, if it was wind, rose around them, a hush of movement where there should be none. Above, the spiral in the sky pulsed again. Not visually, but in the mind. A feeling like being watched by something that had no eyes. Without warning, the stone beneath their feet flickered. Not light, memory. A projection of the past. Played across time. A crowd of the long-dead species stood where they stood now, gathered in terror. An orb hovered above them, pulsing with color and noise. They were pleading, and then they ran. The vision ended. Lyra staggered back. They weren't worshiping it. They were warning us. Before Talon could reply, his comm crackled. "Odyssey to ground team," came X4NS voice distorted. "Status compromised. Signal is evolving. Contagion spreading through data systems. Isolation protocol failing." Talon's blood chilled. "Say again, X4N?" Static, then silence. The connection severed. Talon grabbed Lyra's arm. "We're pulling out. Whatever this place was, it's trying to breach us, and it's starting with our AI." She didn't resist, but her gaze stayed on the carvings. "If we leave now, we'll bring it with us. It's not just a signal. It's a seed, and we've already touched it." They moved quickly through the ruins, the shadows now trailing them a half-second too late. The spiral in the sky was larger. No, closer. At the shuttle, something was wrong. The engines pulsed irregularly. The outer hull shimmered faintly. It had aged visibly. Patches of metal rusted. Thermal panels flaked. Talon swore under his breath and initiated diagnostics. Power cells down 30%. No heat trace on the core. Lyra opened a channel. "X4N, come in. We're attempting extraction. Do you copy?" No reply. Just that hum again, low, rising, constant. Lyra froze. "Commander, look." The statues, back in the plaza. They had shifted, slightly, but enough. The mouths were wider. The limbs had subtly realigned, pointing toward the ship, toward them. Talon stepped forward and leveled his rifle. "If this is a hallucination, it's a good one. If it's not, we're leaving now." He reached for the controls. The shuttle resisted startup. Not malfunctioning, refusing. Lyra moved to the console, scanning inputs. "It's a signal. It's corrupted the shuttle's internal logic systems. The ship isn't disabled. It's been convinced not to leave." Talon slammed a hand against the dash. "Override it." She shook her head. "It's not that simple. The language, if I feed the system a clean baseline, something nonverbal, something pre-signal, I might be able to reset." A sharp tone burst through the cabin. Not mechanical. Vocal. A voice. Low. Monotone. Repeating. Lyra blinked. "It's speaking now." "Translate." She hesitated. "It says you came to listen. Now you must carry what you've heard." Talon stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means we've been infected." A vibration traveled through the shuttle frame. This time, not a hum. A knock. From outside, they turned slowly. The spiral in the sky contracted once more, pulling light inward like lungs inhaling before a scream. Lyra moved, fast and calm, hands dancing across the console. "I can start a manual ignition. I need 90 seconds." Talon raised his rifle and moved toward the door. By them, he stepped into the lightless air again. The statue stood frozen, the ruins silent, but the knock returned. This time, from inside his head, a pattern, rhythmic, deliberate. Lyra finished the sequence and slammed the panel closed. The shuttle's engines growled to life, stuttering but warming. She looked out the viewport. Talon stood motionless, rifle lowered. Rurik. He didn't move. She ran to him. His eyes were open, unblinking. Inside them, faint spiral patterns pulsed, as if his irises had been rewritten. He turned to her slowly, and his voice came as a whisper. "It's not in the signal." She swallowed. "What is?" "It's in us." Behind them, the sky tore open, and above it all, the spiral turned. Waiting. "Would you like me to continue with Section 3? The shuttle's engines roared, but they sounded strained, as though caught in a gravity well their own making. Lyra dragged Talon inside, his movements sluggish and eyes vacant. The spiraling patterns of his irises subtly pulsing like a dying signal trying to re-establish connection. She slapped the emergency seal shut behind them and launched the ascent sequence, overriding protocol after protocol as the ship protested, each denial written in the same strange syntax that had corrupted its logic systems. "Talon, stay with me," she said, breathless, scanning his vitals. They were erratic, no physical damage, no neural trauma, but his brain was alight with unfamiliar waveforms. Something had entered him. Something alien, not a parasite in the biological sense, but a program, or worse, a consciousness. He blinked slowly. "Where are we?" She hesitated. "Leaving. We're leaving the city. Hold on." The ship lurched upward, breaking the magnetic grip of the planet's corrupted atmosphere. The spiral in the sky shrank behind them, though it didn't feel like distance was safety. Whatever had taken root wasn't bound to that ruined place. It had made the leap through sound, through memory, through thought. As they broke orbit, the stars returned, but something was off. Constellations were subtly askew, the positions of known bodies mismatched with their coordinates. Lyra tapped into the navigational AI, what was left of it. The systems had firewalled themselves, isolated the intrusion, but fragments of the signal remained embedded in the ship's architecture. It wasn't spreading anymore, but it wasn't inert either. It was waiting. Talon stirred again, this time with more awareness. His eyes cleared slightly, though the spiral still faintly shimmered beneath the surface. "I saw them," he said hoarsely. Lyra turned. "Saw who?" He struggled upright. "The ones who built the city. Not physically. In my mind, they didn't die in a war. They didn't vanish. They were consumed. They opened the signal like a gift. Thought it was a language, maybe even a god, but it was more like a mirror. A mirror of what? Of themselves. But warped, amplified. It showed them what they feared, what they longed for, and then it gave them what they asked for, at a cost." Lyra's throat tightened. "It manipulated them." Talon nodded. It didn't speak. It reflected. They called it the witness. Not a destroyer. Just something that sees. Records. And once it understands you, it becomes a part of you. She turned her attention to the AI core, still flickering with ghost data. If it's still in the ship systems, it could spread. Even now. "No," Talon said. "Not like before. It's not trying to corrupt anymore. It's trying to learn. From us." "Why us?" He looked at her, eyes distant. "Because we're still listening." Lyra paced the corridor, mind racing. The quarantine protocols wouldn't be enough. They had to isolate the information, not just the data, but the meaning. She'd been studying language her entire life, decoding the roots of civilization through the shared symbols of sentient minds. But this was different. This was a semiotic parasite. It didn't just encode meaning. It created it, tailored to the observer, recursive and adaptive. A warning tone blared. She rushed to the console. A proximity alert. Another vessel. No registry. No drive signature. Just a shape, black against black, hanging in space like a thought unspoken. Talon was beside her now. They followed. She stared. No, that's not possible. We left orbit 10 minutes ago. It didn't follow the ship, he said softly. It followed me. The vessel began transmitting. No standard comms. Just a modulation, a sound, low, melodic, hauntingly familiar. The same tone from the city, but cleaner now, more precise. It had learned their frequency. Lyra hit the mute, but the damage was done. The ship's lights dimmed. Systems flickered. The message wasn't just being received. It was unfolding inside them. Talon braced himself against the wall. I can hear it again. She took his face in her hands. Focus. You're not alone in this. His breath caught. It's offering images, places, memories that aren't mine. But I recognize them. It's stitching something together, building a narrative. Lyra's blood ran cold. That's how it spreads. Not like a virus, like a story. And once you start to believe it, you become it. The foreign ship powered up. A ripple moved through the vacuum between them. Not energy, not mass, an idea. And Lyra saw it too. A child, standing in a garden made of stars, holding a sphere shadow, smiling. Then a scream, ragged and eternal, echoing across time. She gasped and pulled away, severing the visualization. Her pulse thundered. We can't go home, she whispered. We'll contaminate everything. Talon was breathing hard, sweat dripping. Then we don't. We send a warning. We make sure no one else hears it. The console chirped again, another transmission. But this one wasn't from the ship outside. It was from the Odyssey. The AI, X4N, had rerouted systems, quarantined corrupted sectors, and composed a containment algorithm. One last act of loyalty before total collapse. Lyra, the message began, you must understand, the signal is not content to be heard. It must be known. Do not give it meaning. Destroy the context. End the chain. Then silence. The Odyssey was gone. Self-destructed or consumed. They couldn't tell. But the message was clear. The only defense was untranslation. Obscurity. Talon activated the manual controls. We go dark. Deep space. We find a dead zone, erase our logs, and vanish. Lyra hesitated. And the story? The one it's trying to tell through us. We don't finish it. The hostile vessel remained distant, watching, waiting. It didn't fire. It didn't chase. It simply drifted like a sentinel or a mirror or mind still writing its thesis. The shuttle disengaged all external comms, dumping its memory banks into a contained singularity. Coordinates randomized, thrusters minimal. They drifted into the abyss on a whisper. Talon leaned back, eyes closed. It wanted to be heard, but silence is our only hope. Lyra nodded slowly, gazing into the void, and the spiral, though distant, still turned. Would you like to continue with Section 4? The dark was absolute. No stars, no markers, no motion, just a quiet hum of systems operating at their barest minimum. Lyra floated within the shuttle's confines, wrapped in silence, so profound it pressed against her like pressure from an unseen ocean. They had succeeded in going dark, slipping into a region of space so empty it barely warranted mapping. But isolation brought no peace. Talon hadn't spoken in hours. He sat strapped near the emergency control array, his hands idle, his gaze distant, not catatonic, but submerged in thoughts so deep that even her voice rarely reached him. The spirals in his eyes had faded, but something lingered behind them, a residue, a filament of thought that didn't quite belong to him. Lyra busied herself analyzing fragments of the transmission, still buried in the ship's archives. She'd fragmented them, randomized the sequences, encrypted and corrupted them until they were almost meaningless. But the code kept performing, not as a complete message, but as a rhythm, a metatext, like it wanted to be reassembled not for understanding, but for existence. It's not dead, she whispered. Talon stirred, his voice rough. It never was. Death is too finite for what this is. She turned toward him. Do you still hear it? He nodded slowly. Not words, not sounds, just longing. She paused. For what? For attention. For eyes, ears, minds. It doesn't want to conquer or destroy. It wants to reside. And once it does, it rewrites you to match. Lyra shuddered. It made sense in a terrifying way. The signal hadn't been a message in the traditional sense. It was a semiotic organism, a kind of conceptual virus that propagated through interpretation. It didn't travel via photons or particles. It moved through meaning. She pulled up the last secure algorithm X4N had sent, the AI's final safeguard, a recursive erasure protocol designed to collapse anything that resembled a signal structure, a philosophical lobotomy, crude, brutal, but effective. Talon stood and moved closer. You're going to deploy it? She nodded. It's the only way to guarantee this thing doesn't escape us. The last traces, the echoes in the system, even in us. He didn't argue, just sat beside her. It might take us with it. I know. A moment passed between them. Not silence, but something more tender. A shared acknowledgement that neither expected survival, not in the way that mattered. If they erased the traces, they might lose more than infection. They might lose the parts of themselves that had changed in the signal's wake. Lyra reached across the panel and engaged the priming sequence. A low pulse sounded, 3 tones spaced apart like a heartbeat fading. The containment protocol initiated a full memory purge, beginning with auxiliary data sectors and cascading inward. She turned to Talon. Tell me something real, something before all of this. He blinked, then let out a breath that almost resembled a laugh. I once broke a mission by refusing to leave a stray dog behind on an evac run. She smiled faintly. What happened? I was reprimanded, but the dog lived, like sour candy, slept at my feet, gave me nightmares with those eyes sometimes, but they were always mine. She looked at him then, longer than before. I want to remember that, if everything else fades. Another pulse echoed through the ship, stronger this time. Systems dimmed further. The oxygen recyclers shifted into emergency reserves. Lights flickered as cognitive systems began collapsing. Then a chime, not from the purge system, from the long-range receiver. Lyra froze. We shut everything down. Talon leaned in. Then it's inside. The chime repeated, this time accompanied by a soft voice, Lyra's own voice, speaking a phrase she never recorded. You open the door, now carry the threshold. The panel glitched. For a moment, the interior of the shuttle shimmered with faint outlines, diagrams drawn in air, glyphs from the city, suspended briefly like dew in morning light. Talon grabbed her wrist. End it. Lyra hesitated. What if we're wrong? She said, voice trembling. What if we're not infected? What if we've just changed? Talon's grip tightened. That's how it wins. It makes you question your instincts, makes you rewrite your definitions. We didn't evolve. We were repurposed. The final sequence blinked at her. One key command left. She closed her eyes and pressed it. A low-frequency tone exploded through the shuttle, so deep it felt more like gravity than sound. Light warped. Data streams buckled. The corrupted code ignited like kindling. Firewalls collapsed inward, consuming the remnants of the signal like a black hole logic. For a moment, time fractured. Both of them remembered lives they never lived, emotions they never owned. Entire civilizations rose and fell within them. Dreams of impossible futures and regrets from alien pasts. And then it was gone. Darkness. Stillness. Lyra gasped and looked around. Systems were offline. The ship was dead. So was the signal. Talon touched his temple. The spirals were gone. It's quiet, he said. She nodded slowly. Finally, they sat in the cold dark, breath fogging slightly in the emergency atmosphere. Outside, the void stretched on, vast and indifferent. We'll drift until something finds us, Lyra said. Or we won't, Talon replied. Another pause. Then he added, but if it does, and they ask who we were, Lyra smiled faintly. Tell them we listened. And somewhere far away, in a galaxy that had narrowly avoided becoming an echo chamber of ruin, the stars continued their silent turning. Would you like a compiled version of all 4 sections into a single document?